In just 51 seconds, $4.7 million in defense contractor donations vanished from public discussion. Zohran Mamdani didn't adjust his microphone or wait for the moderator. He pulled out a manila folder, flipped to page 7, and began reading transaction dates aloud. Cameras zoomed in, the Fox News control room froze. What did Zohran Mamdani expose about Lindsey Graham's PAC funding that made America's most watched cable network cut their own live broadcast? The House Armed Services Committee hearing room buzzed with the usual pre-session energy at exactly 9:15 a.m. on October 17, 2024. Mahogany desks arranged in perfect semicircles faced the witness table, where defense contractors had been scheduled to testify about budget allocation, inefficiencies. The air smelled of coffee, leather briefcases, and the anticipation that comes with televised hearings, where political careers can pivot in real time. Zohran Mamdani walked in like a tenant organizer, who had memorized every broken promise. His navy blue suit was pressed, but not expensive. His tie slightly loosened from the morning commute from Queens. In his left hand, he carried a battered leather satchel that had seen more community meetings than congressional hearings. In his right, a stack of papers with yellow sticky notes protruding like tiny flags of war. Across the chamber, Lindsey Graham sat like a senator carved in entitlement. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his flag pin caught the studio lighting just right, and his smile never wavered even when cameras weren't rolling. Behind him, 3 aides shuffled through talking points on iPads, while a Fox News producer counted down to live coverage in their earpiece. At 9:23 a.m., Committee Chair Mike Rogers called the hearing to order. Today, we examine defense spending transparency and contractor accountability. His voice echoed through the chamber as C-SPAN cameras began their slow pan across the assembled representatives. Our first witness panel includes executives from Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing. The executives entered, wearing identical Navy suits, and practiced expressions of patriotic concern. They sat behind nameplates that read like a who's who of America's military-industrial complex. Each carried briefcases worth more than most Americans' monthly rent, filled with prepared statements about national security and fiscal responsibility. Graham leaned into his microphone first. His South Carolina drawl filled the room with practiced warmth. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Your companies provide the backbone of American defense, and I want to personally thank you for keeping our nation secure. His voice carried the weight of someone who had been saying these same words for decades. The Fox News chyron read, "Defense spending under scrutiny," as cameras captured Graham's opening remarks. In living rooms across America, viewers settled in for what they expected to be another routine hearing about military budgets and government contracts. But Zohran Mamdani was taking notes, his pen moving rapidly across a yellow legal pad. Every few seconds he glanced up at the contractors, then back down at his papers, then across to Graham. His expression remained neutral, but those who knew him from district meetings in Astoria recognized the focused intensity that preceded uncomfortable questions. At 9:31 a.m., Graham began his questioning. "Mr. Henderson, from Lockheed Martin, can you speak to the jobs your company creates in South Carolina?" The question was a softball, designed to showcase economic benefits rather than examine financial relationships. "Senator Graham, we're proud to employ over 8,000 South Carolinians in high-paying manufacturing jobs," Henderson replied smoothly. "Your support for the F-35 program has been instrumental in maintaining these positions." Graham nodded approvingly. "And these are good-paying jobs that support families and communities, correct?" "Absolutely, Senator." The exchange continued for several minutes, a familiar dance between lawmakers and contractors that viewers had seen countless times before. Questions about job creation, technological advancement, and strategic military needs. Answers about American innovation, global leadership, and fiscal efficiency. Fox News anchor Brett Baier provided commentary during brief commercial breaks. "What we're seeing here is standard oversight proceedings. Senator Graham, as a senior member of the Armed Services Committee, is asking the kinds of questions taxpayers expect about defense spending." But in the hearing room, Zohran Mamdani continued taking notes. His satchel lay open beside him, revealing file folders organized with colored tabs. red for campaign finance records, yellow for contractor lobbying reports, green for voting records, cross-referenced with donation timelines. At 9:47 a.m., Chairman Rogers recognized Mamdani for his first round of questions. The young representative from Queens stood slowly, adjusting his glasses and opening the manila folder that would change everything. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Mamdani began, his voice steady but carrying an edge that made the contractors shift in their seats. "Mr. Henderson, you mentioned job creation in South Carolina. Can you tell us about your company's Political Action Committee contributions to senators who vote on defense appropriations?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Henderson's prepared smile faltered slightly. "Congressman Mamdani, our PAC contributions are all public record and fully comply with federal election law." "I'm sure they are," Mamdani replied, flipping to page 3 of his folder. "In fact, I have those records right here. Your PAC contributed $84,700 to senators on this committee over the past 2 election cycles. Is that accurate?" Henderson glanced at his legal counsel before responding. "I'd have to verify those specific numbers, but our political engagement is transparent and legal." Mamdani nodded slowly, then turned his attention to Graham. "Senator Graham, according to Federal Election Commission filings, your campaigns and associated PACs have received $4.7 million from defense contractor political action committees since 2018. Are you aware of this figure?" The chamber temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Graham's aide leaned forward to whisper in his ear, but the senator waved him away with practiced confidence. "Young man," Graham said, his drawl becoming more pronounced, "I'm proud to support our defense industry. These companies employ hundreds of thousands of Americans and keep our nation safe. Their political participation is their constitutional right." "Of course it is," Mamdani agreed, pulling out a second sheet of paper. "But what's interesting is the timing. On March 15, 2022, you received a $225,000 contribution from the Lockheed Martin PAC. 2 days later, you co-sponsored Amendment 8047 to increase F-35 funding by $2.3 billion. Coincidence? Fox News producers in the control room exchanged glances. This wasn't the routine oversight hearing they had planned to cover. In New York, network executives began monitoring viewer metrics as the tension escalated. Graham's jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. That amendment was about national security, not politics. "I don't appreciate the implication." "Not implying anything," Mamdani responded, his voice remaining calm. "I'm reading facts from public records. On August 3, 2022, Boeing's PAC contributed $89,000 to your re-election campaign. On August 8, you voted against Amendment 2047, which would have required competitive bidding for KC-46 tanker maintenance contracts, currently held exclusively by Boeing. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft clicking of camera shutters and the scratch of reporters' pens on notepads. Committee members on both sides of the aisle leaned forward, suddenly aware they were witnessing something unprecedented. "Furthermore," Mamdani continued, consulting his notes, "Raytheon's PAC contributed $267,000 to your campaigns over the same period. During that time, you voted to approve $4.8 billion in Patriot missile system purchases, despite Pentagon reports indicating cost overruns of 340% compared to initial projections." Graham's face was reddening, his carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. These votes were about protecting American interests, not campaign contributions. "I resent any suggestion otherwise." At exactly 9:52 a.m., something extraordinary happened. Mamdani reached into his satchel and pulled out a printed email, holding it high enough for cameras to capture the official letterhead. "Senator Graham, this is a forwarded email from your office to Lockheed Martin's government relations team, dated September 4, 2023. It reads, and I quote, "Looking forward to discussing the new fighter jet appropriations at next week's fundraiser. Your continued support is invaluable to keeping America strong. Would you like to explain this communication?" The contractor executives had gone pale. Henderson loosened his tie slightly while his colleagues stared at their hands. The Fox News cameras captured every uncomfortable moment. broadcasting the tension to millions of viewers who had tuned in, expecting routine political theater. Graham shot to his feet, his chair rolling backward. That's a private communication taken out of context. You have no right to weaponize personal correspondence for political gain. It's not personal correspondence, Mamdani replied evenly. It's an official communication from your Senate office to a government contractor, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request. It's public record, Senator. At 9:53 a.m. and 27 seconds, something unprecedented happened in the Fox News control room. Senior producer Janet Morrison received a phone call that lasted exactly 17 seconds. When she hung up, she immediately signaled the director. "Cut the feed," she said quietly. "Ma'am?" the director responded. "Cut the feed, now." At 9:53 a.m. and 44 seconds, Fox News viewers across America saw their screens flash to a commercial break. But this wasn't a scheduled break. The network had made an executive decision to stop broadcasting the hearing entirely. However, C-SPAN continued rolling, and social media was already exploding. Twitter users began posting clips of the exchange faster than platform moderators could track them. Mamdani exposes truth began trending within minutes, followed by Graham PAC scandal, and Fox News cut the feed. Back in the hearing room, unaware that Fox News had abandoned coverage, Mamdani pressed forward. "Senator, your office scheduled 17 fundraising events with defense contractors, while the defense appropriations bill was under committee review. Do you see any ethical concerns with this timeline?" Graham's carefully constructed political persona was unraveling in real time. His silver hair was now slightly disheveled, his flag pin askew, and his face had progressed from red to purple. "This is a witch hunt. You're twisting routine political fundraising into some kind of conspiracy." "I'm reading dates and dollar amounts from FEC filings," Mamdani responded. "On October 12, 2023, at the Marriott in Charleston, your campaign hosted a private dinner with executives from all three companies sitting at this table. The suggested donation was $5,000 per plate. The next day, you released a statement calling for increased defense spending to meet emerging global threats." Committee Chairman Rogers attempted to restore order. "The gentleman's time has expired." "Mr. Chairman," Mamdani interrupted respectfully, "I have one final question that American taxpayers deserve to have answered." The chamber fell silent. Even the reporters stopped scribbling, sensing a climactic moment approaching. Mamdani looked directly at Graham, holding up a final document. "Senator, this is your financial disclosure form from 2023. It shows stock holdings in a defense industry mutual fund worth between $250,000. You vote on contracts that directly impact the value of companies you own stock in. How is this not a conflict of interest?" The silence that followed was deafening. Graham stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. The contractors had shrunk into their chairs, hoping to become invisible. Committee members from both parties stared in stunned silence. CNN, which had been monitoring the hearing online, immediately broke into regular programming with a breaking news banner. MSNBC began replaying clips of the exchange within minutes. Social media platforms crashed temporarily under the volume of shares, comments, and reactions. In the Fox News control room, executives were fielding angry phone calls from viewers demanding to know why their coverage had suddenly ended. The network's decision to cut the feed had backfired spectacularly, drawing more attention to the story than continued coverage might have generated. By 10:15 a.m., Fox News censorship was trending alongside the original hashtags. Media watchdog groups were already drafting statements about corporate media bias and the dangers of selective news coverage. Graham finally found his voice, but the damage was done. "These are legal investments, managed by a blind trust. Everything I've done has been in service of American defense and security." But Mamdani wasn't finished. "A senator, your blind trust is managed by Rothschild Investment Corporation, whose biggest client is the defense industry. The trustee, Marcus Rothschild, is your former chief of staff. How blind is a trust managed by your personal friend, who specializes in defense stocks?" The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Reporters began furiously typing on phones and laptops. congressional aides scattered to begin damage control. The contractors looked like they wanted to disappear into their leather chairs. At 10:22 a.m., Senator Graham walked out of the hearing room, without another word, his aides scrambling to follow. The dramatic exit was captured by every remaining camera in the room, and shared instantly across social media platforms. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within 2 hours, Graham 47 million was trending nationally. Progressive politicians from across the country began calling for ethics investigations. Conservative commentators struggled to defend the documented financial relationships while maintaining credibility. By evening, the story had evolved beyond social media trends. Evening news broadcasts led with the confrontation. Late-night comedy shows prepared emergency segments. Editorial boards at major newspapers began drafting opinion pieces about money in politics and media censorship. Zoran Mamdani returned to his small office in the Cannon House office building, where his phone had been ringing continuously since the hearing ended. Requests for interviews from every major network except Fox News flooded his voicemail. But perhaps most significantly, the confrontation had exposed something deeper than one senator's financial entanglements. It revealed the complex web of money, influence, and information control that shapes American political discourse. The fact that Fox News had cut their feed suggested coordination between media corporations and political interests that went beyond simple editorial bias. 3 days later, Graham announced he would not seek re-election, citing a desire to spend more time with family. Federal ethics investigators opened a preliminary inquiry into potential conflicts of interest. Defense contractors began reviewing their political engagement strategies. The young representative from Queens had accomplished something that seemed impossible in modern American politics. He had used facts, documentation, and persistent questioning to hold powerful interests accountable in real time, on live television, with millions of witnesses. But perhaps most importantly, when one network tried to silence the story, the internet ensured it lived forever. In an age of information warfare, sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply reading public records aloud and asking why the cameras went dark. The $4.7 million that Lindsey Graham received from defense contractors would forever be linked to 51 seconds of live television that exposed how money flows through American politics when nobody thinks anyone is paying attention. Sometimes truth doesn't need dramatic music or cinematic lighting. Sometimes truth just needs a young representative with a manila folder and the courage to read financial documents aloud while cameras are rolling. Even when those cameras suddenly, inexplicably, stop.